Okay, let's be honest. Have you ever been involved in a construction project that finished exactly on time?
Yeah, right. Good luck with that.
Probably not.
It's like hoping for a unicorn sighting on a job site.
But seriously, what happens when those deadlines inevitably start to slip?
Oh, man. That's when things get interesting.
Today, we're going to dive deep into the world of extensions of time.
Those clauses in contracts that everyone loves to hate.
Exactly. They can make or break a project, and today we're going to unpack how they work.
It's like a high-stakes poker game with concrete and steel.
Our guide for this deep dive is the RICS guide, Extensions of Time.
Ah, the RICS guide, a classic.
It's a bit dense, but luckily we have you, the expert, to help us break it down.
Well, the RICS guide is fantastic because it pulls together insights from a ton of construction professionals.
So it's like getting the inside scoop from people who've actually been there, done that, dealt with the delays firsthand.
Exactly. War stories from the trenches.
So by the end of this deep dive, we'll be able to spot those tricky clauses and know how to deal with delays strategically.
We'll cover the basics, but also give you some practical tips you can actually use.
Perfect. Let's start with the obvious. Why are delays such a big deal?
Besides the fact that they drive everyone crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's annoying when things run late, but is it really that critical?
Oh, it's way more than just annoying delays equal money and lots of it.
Okay, I'm listening. Break it down for me. What kind of money are we talking about here?
Well, for the folks paying for the project delays mean lost opportunities.
Right, they're on the hook for all those costs.
Imagine a shopping center that can't open on time that's rent money down the drain loan payments piling up.
It can snowball pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, it can get ugly fast.
And for the contractor, I'm guessing sitting around waiting isn't cheap either.
Nope, not at all. Construction crews, equipment rentals, site security, all those costs keep ticking, even if the work's on hold.
Plus, there's the hit to their reputation.
Nobody wants to be known as the company that's always behind schedule.
So that's where those liquidated damages clauses come in to sort of soften the blow.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like a financial safety net written right into the contract.
So both sides agree up front on what the penalty will be for each day. The project's late.
It sets the ground rules for the blame game before things even go wrong.
That's actually a pretty smart approach. So how did these clauses even come about?
Did someone just wake up one day and decide, hey, let's make a rule for when projects go sideways?
It seems like something that would have evolved over time.
Well, there's a pretty interesting legal history here, cases from way back in the 1800s like Holm v. Guppy and Wells v. Army and Navy Cooperative Society laid the groundwork for how we deal with delays today.
So those old-timey cases are still relevant today.
It just goes to show that construction delays have been a headache for centuries.
And we're still trying to figure out the best way to handle them.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's fast forward to today. What exactly are these extension of time clauses, and how do they work in practice?
Essentially, they're a way for contractors to get some breathing room when delays are caused by things outside their control.
So not just when they mess up, but when something legitimate throws a wrench in the works.
Like if there's a freak storm or the client decides to change the design midway through things the contractor couldn't have planned for.
Right. It's about allocating risk where it belongs.
Makes sense. So how do these clauses play out in different types of contracts?
I'm guessing there's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
You're right. Different contracts have different flavors of extension of time clauses. Let's start with a popular one in the UK, the JCT Standard Building Contract.
Okay. The JCT.
This contract is all about relevant events, a specific list of things that can trigger an extension of time.
So it's like a checklist of valid excuses for being late.
Pretty much. Think exceptional weather, unforeseen ground conditions, or even delays caused by the client themselves.
Ah, so there's got to be some proof, right?
Exactly. You can't just say, hey, it rained, give us more time. You need to show a clear link between the relevant event and the actual delay.
So detailed records, weather reports, site photos, communication logs, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Anything that proves your case, and you need to act fast. Those delay notices have to be submitted promptly.
So no dragging your feet and hoping the problem goes away.
Definitely not. The clock is ticking. And the JCT is pretty strict about timelines.
Okay, so that's the JCT. What about other contracts? Do they all have these relevant event lists?
Not exactly. Let's look at NEC3, the new engineering contract. It takes a more flexible approach.
Okay, a more flexible how so?
It focuses on compensation events. Basically anything that causes a change to the project's planned cost or completion date.
So a bit broader than just a list of predefined excuses.
Yes. NEC3 is all about looking ahead. When a compensation event pops up, both sides have to figure out how it'll impact the project going forward.
Interesting. So it's less about pointing fingers and more about collaboratively adjusting the plan.
Exactly, and here's a unique twist. NEC3 has this concept called deemed acceptance.
Deemed acceptance. What's that?
If the client doesn't respond to a contractor's proposal within a certain time frame, it's automatically considered accepted.
Wait, so silence equals agreement? That seems risky for the client.
It definitely encourages proactive communication and keeps things moving. NEC3 is all about transparency.
Got it. So we've got the JCT, which is all about ticking boxes, improving your case, and then NEC3, which is more about rolling with the punches and adapting the plan together.
A good analogy.
What other contract types should we have on our radar?
Let's touch upon the IC conditions of contract. Now, this one has similarities to the JCT.
Okay, back to checklists.
Precisely, it also uses a predefined list of delay events, but the specific events listed might differ slightly from the JCT.
So it highlights the importance of understanding the nuances of each contract.
Exactly what might fly in one contract might not in another.
Okay, so we've got a good grasp on the what of extension of time clauses, but how do we actually put this knowledge into action?
That's the million-dollar question.
When a delay happens, how do we figure out who's responsible and by how much?
That's where the real detective work begins. We move from theory to practice.
Like piecing together a puzzle, but with deadlines and budgets hanging in the balance.
Exactly. And luckily, we have several methods for analyzing delays, each with its own pros and cons.
Well, I'm all ears. Let's dive into those methods and figure out how to crack the code of construction delays.
Sounds like a plan. Let's start with the simplest method, a good old-fashioned overview of the facts.
Okay, overview the facts sounds pretty straightforward. Is it literally just gathering all the info and seeing what story it tells?
Yeah, basically you're looking at contracts, emails, meeting notes, progress reports, anything that gives you a picture of what happened on the project.
So like a timeline of events?
Exactly, and it can be a good starting point, especially for simpler delays.
But I can see how that could get messy, right? What if there are conflicting accounts of what caused the delay?
That's the downside. It can get subjective with each side spinning their own version of events.
So it becomes a he said, she said situation.
Exactly. That's why good documentation is so crucial. The more evidence you have, timestamps, photos, detailed records, the stronger your argument will be.
Makes sense. So what's next on the delay analysis ladder?
Let's move on to comparing actual versus planned progress.
Okay, that sounds pretty intuitive.
You're basically holding the project's actual timeline up against the original schedule and looking for discrepancies.
So you need some pretty detailed records for that to work.
You need the original project schedule, regular progress reports, and records of any changes made along the way.
So it's all about spotting those moments where reality veers off course from the plan.
Exactly. It helps you pinpoint when delays occurred and how much they impacted the overall timeline.
Okay, so we've got the gut check method and the compare and contrast method. What happens when those aren't enough?
Then we bring out the big guns critical path analysis.
Okay, now we're talking.
This is where things get a little more technical, but also a lot more insightful.
Okay, break it down for me. What is this critical path everyone's always talking about?
Imagine your project as a chain of tasks, each one depending on the one before it. The critical path is the sequence of tasks that absolutely cannot be delayed without pushing back the final completion date.
So it's like the backbone of the project timeline.
Exactly. And what's cool about critical path analysis is that it shows how delays in those crucial tasks ripple through the entire project.
So you can see the domino effect.
Exactly. You can see exactly how much each delay contributed to the overall slippage.
That's pretty powerful. It takes the guesswork out of it.
It does. But what about those tasks that are on the critical path? Do delays in those even matter?
That's a good question. I would think so, but maybe not.
That's where the concept of float comes. Float, also known as slack time, is the amount of wiggle room you have in those non-critical tasks.
So a delay in a task with float might not actually push back the overall project.
Exactly. It depends how much float there is and how long the delay lasts. Critical path analysis helps us see which delays are the real deal breakers and which ones we can absorb without major consequences.
I'm starting to see how powerful this method can be. But what if we need to get even more granular, like if there's a dispute over a very specific period of time?
Then we can zoom in with techniques like time impact analysis or the window method.
Okay, so these are even more specialized.
These are super focused approaches that analyze delays within a specific window of time, like a week or even a day.
So it's like using a magnifying glass to examine those critical moments where things went wrong.
Precisely. If there are conflicting claims or a lot of finger pointing, these methods can help pinpoint exactly who caused what delay and when.
It's amazing how much detail goes into analyzing these delays. It's like a whole science in itself.
It really is. There's a lot more to it than meets the eye.
But with all these different methods, how do you choose the right one for your situation?
That's the million-dollar question. There's no one-size-fits-all answer. It depends on the complexity of the project, the nature of the delay, the information available, and even the budget for the analysis.
So it's a balancing act.
You have to weigh the cost and effort of the analysis against the potential benefits.
If it's a simple delay with clear documentation, a basic overview of the facts might be enough. But if it's a complex multi-million-dollar project with multiple overlapping delays, you might need to bring in the critical path analysis cavalry.
And remember, the contract itself might dictate which method you use.
Ah, good point. So always check the contract first.
Absolutely. And here's a hot tip. Consider engaging an expert early on. A quantity surveyor or construction lawyer can guide you through the process and help you choose the most appropriate method.
Great advice. Now let's talk about those dreaded concurrent delays. How do we untangle those situations where both the contractor and the client contribute to the delay?
Concurrent delays, the bane of every construction project.
And I imagine those situations are ripe for disputes and arguments.
Absolutely. But thankfully, there's legal precedent to help us navigate this murky territory. Remember the Walter Lilly case we mentioned earlier?
The one from 2012, vaguely remind me what that established.
That case was a game changer because it established that even if a contractor is partially responsible for a delay, they can still get an extension of time if there's a concurrent delay caused by the client.
So even if the contractor messed up a little, they're not automatically penalized if the client also contributed to the delay.
Exactly. It's about looking at the big picture and fairly allocating responsibility. If a client-caused delay is happening at the same time as a contractor-caused delay, the contractor might still be entitled to some relief.
That seems pretty fair, actually, but how do you prove that a delay was truly concurrent?
That's where those detailed records come in handy again. You need to be able to demonstrate with evidence that both delays were happening simultaneously and that they both contributed to the overall project slippage.
So meticulous documentation isn't just about covering your own butt. It's also about ensuring a fair outcome when multiple parties are involved.
You got it. And remember, concurrent delays can get complicated fast. Don't be afraid to seek expert advice. A construction lawyer can help you untangle the mess and build a solid case.
Okay, so we've talked about the different methods for analyzing delays, and we've even tackled those tricky concurrent delay situations. What are some key takeaways our listeners should keep in mind when faced with these challenges?
Well, first and foremost, don't panic. Delays are a common part of construction, and there are tools and processes in place to deal with them fairly.
Right. It's not the end of the world.
Exactly. Be proactive. Know your contract inside and out. Understand those extension of time clauses and keep meticulous records of everything.
And don't be afraid to speak up. Communicate with the other parties involved. Raise those red flags early and work together to find solutions.
Great points. And when things do get messy, remember the Walter Lilly case. Concurrent delays can be tricky, but there's a legal framework in place to protect both sides.
So knowledge is power. The more you understand about extensions of time and delay analysis, the better equipped you'll be to navigate these challenges and keep your projects on track.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to shift gears a bit. We focused a lot on the legal and financial side of delays, but what about the human side?
The often overlooked aspect of construction projects.
Exactly. Delays don't just impact deadlines and budgets, they also impact people. They can strain relationships, create tension on site, and even damage reputations.
Absolutely. A delayed project can mean stressed out workers, frustrated clients, and a whole lot of finger pointing.
So how do we manage that human side of things? How do we prevent delays from turning into full-blown relationship disasters?
It all comes back to communication and transparency. Keep everyone in the loop, be upfront about challenges, and work collaboratively to find solutions.
So instead of retreating to your corner and fighting for your own interests, you're saying it's better to come together and find a way forward as a team.
Exactly. Remember, you're all in this together. A delay doesn't have to be a disaster. It can be an opportunity to build stronger relationships and learn valuable lessons for future projects.
Love that perspective, turning those setbacks into stepping stones. So it sounds like delays are pretty much inevitable in construction.
Yeah, I'd say that's a safe bet. It's not a matter of if they'll happen, but when.
Right, and it's not just about the legal stuff and the money, it's about remembering the human element and keeping those communication lines open.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You don't want a delay turning into a total relationship disaster.
Okay, so next time I'm staring down a looming deadline, what's the first thing I should do? Besides maybe panicking a little?
Well, first take a deep breath. And remember, it's not the end of the world. Then grab that contract and your trusty RICS guide.
Right. Arm yourself with knowledge.
Exactly. Understand your rights, the specific clauses at play, and the potential consequences of the delay.
Don't just bury your head in the sand and hope it goes away.
And while you're at it, double-check that your documentation is airtight. Detailed records are crucial when it comes to proving the cause and impact of the delay.
Got it. So armed with knowledge and a mountain of paperwork. What's next?
Talk to people, communicate with the other parties involved, explain the situation, and explore potential solutions together.
So collaboration over confrontation.
Exactly. Remember, you're all in this together. A delay doesn't have to be a disaster. It can be a chance to work together, adapt, and learn some valuable lessons along the way.
I love that perspective, turning those setbacks into opportunities for growth.
That's the spirit.
Well, I feel like we've covered a ton of ground today, from the nitty-gritty details of those extension of time clauses to the big picture thinking needed to tackle delays head on.
We've gone deep.
I don't know about you, but I feel a lot more equipped to deal with those inevitable project hiccups now.
Me too. And remember, every delay, no matter how frustrating, is a learning opportunity. It's a chance to refine your processes, strengthen your communication, and build more resilient project teams.
That's a great way to look at it, turning those setbacks into opportunities for growth. Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive into the world of construction delays. We hope you found it insightful, informative, and maybe even a little bit entertaining.
And if you did, be sure to subscribe to the Deep Dive for more explorations into the fascinating world of knowledge. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that's sure to make you think, learn, and maybe even chuckle a little along the way.